I'm Matt Lively, and I am a Richmond artist.
And I'm Emily Smith, and I'm the director of 1708 Gallery, a Richmond nonprofit art space down the street.
I have been
Hi, Matt.
Hello, Emily. I've been on the board of 1708 Gallery for I don't know how long. You might know more than I would, right?
Well, I know that you were in the group that interviewed me for the job, so you've at least been on the board longer than 6 years. I can give you that, because I've been there for 6 years.
Okay.
And I remember because you asked me what I would do if it was the day of, and this is sort of apropos to everything, what I would do if there was a crisis and I needed something built on the day of an installation, like who would I call? And you wanted to know exactly who I would call. And now I know I would call you, so it's kind of perfect.
Well, I certainly wasn't baiting you to say me for that question, and I don't remember even asking that, but it's probably a good question.
That's a good question.
I'm glad you answered it correctly enough to get the job.
Right.
Because you've been doing a fantastic job with 1708. 1708, from an artist's point of view, was a long time ago. I didn't go to 1708 much because, and this was a long, long time ago, 15 years or so. And I thought that it was the fancy VCU art snobs is what my perspective was. And then I thought that if I got involved, maybe I could change that. And Chuck Scanlon suggested that he nominated me or something like that. And I think that the InLight show, he went to Paris or something and saw an InLight over there and suggested that 1708 do something like that in Richmond. Correct me if I'm wrong, this is just from an local artist perspective. And then when I got in there, I found that it was just a cool gallery that wanted to do cool things and had this wicked integrity. You know, they're not flexible. Don't even have a flat file as of today to sell extra work. Even when, as a nonprofit, when the lights could go out at any moment, they still keep that, hang on to that integrity and have that be the most important thing. I could go into InLight, but you respond now, Emily.
So I think it's interesting to hear that perspective, and I think there's definitely, for those that don't know, a long connection that 1708 has with VCU. So this idea that we had snotty VCU artists or snobby VCU artists, there's that's based in our history. We were founded, of course, by Joe Seipel and a bunch of VCU faculty in '78, and across these last almost 40 years, a lot of things have changed, but I think at the core has been this desire to show new art and show experimental art and to not be tied to commercial enterprises. And so you're talking about not having a flat file, even though sometimes we're like, oh, the lights are going to run if we don't get a check tomorrow. Have tried to keep that and really constantly remind ourselves that that's part of our programming. And I think what it's allowed us to do, and Matt, you've been a part of this, being on the exhibitions committee, is thinking about bringing artists to Richmond who might not have an opportunity to come here, or in some cases, as we'll see, giving opportunities to artists in Richmond to do new things. And like the image behind us is from our current show, which is a installation by Molly Lowe. And these are 4 stills from her video. It's an hour-long video, and she'd had a bigger installation with different parts, but wanted to try a streamlined kind of theater effect, and so we gave her the space to do that. And just before that was Douglas Rieger's show, and he was a BFA sculpture student at VCU in 2008, and it was really heartening to hear him talk about being a student here and how he'd always thought about 1708, but from afar, and never really thought about having a show. And then when we offered him the opportunity, it was like this just great chance for him to really like expand his thesis work and do new stuff. And then I would also point to projects like John Fryer's 50/50 Recovery Roast, which was part of a summer project, as an example of artists in Richmond having a platform to try new things and to experiment with projects. And I think one of the things that's been great for me is working with so many artists on the board, like you and the rest of the committee, to constantly bounce ideas and to, I think, make the best decisions we possibly can, around what we do in the gallery. But then, of course, there's other stuff that we do, like monster drawing. Do you want to talk about monster drawing? You're a big part of that.
We can talk about monster drawing. Monster drawing is one of the, it's a hands-on thing. It's not really all that sophisticated. Everybody can understand it, and we invite the community in to watch artists do these drawings. It's kind of like the street art festivals that happen in town, except on a really small scale. And it's you can see a lot of the artists that are 1708 board members really actually doing something in 1 hour, and then they sell the work as a fundraiser. But it's one of my favorite things because it directly it invites the community in to get into the gallery and see what we do, and even see some of the process of what they do to help educate just normal folks on what it's all about, so that they don't look at it as this ultra sophisticated gallery that they're afraid to go into because they don't think that they would understand. One of the images that you showed a minute ago with the, I can't think of his name, the VCU sculpture grad that had the, it looked like scaffolding, that one.
Yeah.
When I talk to him, and I'm an artist, but I'm a normal dude, 60% normal dude, and I have questions just like anybody else would about work. So I just found him in the gallery and asked him all kinds of questions, and they were really simple answers, the kind of answers that I would have if I was asked those questions about the work. And these were essentially large-scale dog toys. And when I looked at them like that, I was like, oh yeah, they are dog toys, aren't they? They're just really big. And they were big. The photo doesn't do them justice. They're really enormous things. And when when these dog toys are way bigger than you, you don't read them like dog toys. But I immediately understood everything that he was saying and making, and it all made sense to me. Whereas 5 minutes before, I was like, what is this? I gotta be smart if I walk in here. But it turns out I didn't have to be all that smart to enjoy it like I did. All right, you can go forward again.
I hadn't heard the dog toy illusion, but it reminds me, I don't think you can see
he
it.
and I were talking artist to artist.
Yeah.
He knew that I was an artist and knew there's the making of the work, and the seed of thought is usually pretty basic. And then when you have to think about it longer, or you have to come up with a artist statement that just doesn't say dog toys on it, dog toys real big. You have to think of other words, and since he felt safe that I was just an artist that he could talk to, we were just talking shop, really.
Well, from like when I'll put my curator spin on it, like, he doesn't treat his work preciously, like the way it's made, the way he moves it around, even like the wood piece in the front, which is about your height. So talking about scale, it is a large piece. When you looked at it closely, you could see all the joints, all the places that it was attached. So he did not try to be like overly polished or overly sort of special. And you can't see it in this piece, but there was a large pink dog toy right around the corner in the gallery. And when he got back to the studio, when he deinstalled and took the work back to Brooklyn, he cut it into pieces. He was like, I'm done with that, I need pieces. So really, like, I think again back to this idea of artists having a chance to do things and try things and not be, it's an open-ended conversation, like what goes on here, might think about other things later, and though it sort of breaks my heart to think of him taking a chainsaw to the piece,
Yeah.
I also appreciate that like it's a really fluid process and a really like ongoing, all the time changing kind of thing. Going back to monster drawing, I think one of the things that, one of the stories I love about monster drawing, there are two stories. One I've experienced, one I only know anecdotally. So to give a little bit of detail, monster drawing is a project we do every December, and we invite about 60 artists. They're divided up into 3 one-hour slots, and they literally make art for an hour, and it's a hard, fast hour. A whistle starts the hour, a whistle that I really love to blow, it's my favorite part of the day, stops the hour. You have to stop, you walk away. And there are 3 shifts, and as you can see here, folks do come in and they interact and they watch the artists. Some artists are real serious.
They heckle the artists.
They heckle a little bit. Some put their earbuds in and are like really in the zone. Others, I don't know if that's not in this image, but another board member, Kendra Wadsworth, has started using a drill. She's attached a pencil to her drill, so she's at so in the middle of this very already active day, there's the sound of this drill making work. But apparently the very first year that 1708 did monster drawing, and I should add that organizations across the country do this. This is not original to us. We borrowed it from Southern Exposure in San Francisco, and it's since, I would say more nonprofits do it than don't. But the first year, as I understand it, artists were like, I'm not going to sit at a table in the gallery and draw while people watch me draw. No way, forget about it. And so there was a little bit of a coercion, and I think Diego Sanchez, who's an artist in town and a former board member, I think we lobbied him, and then he lobbied Mary Skurlock and Cindy Neuschwander, or maybe it went the other way, maybe Cindy was first, but there was a fair amount of come on, let's just try this once, let's do it, it's all, it won't hurt, and now we have to turn artists away, which is, I think it actually is really, for the most part, fun for artists to do. I know it's fun for us. It's also, this is the story that I've experienced. Monster Drawing is the only event we do where nobody calls me on Monday morning to tell me all the things that I should have done differently. Where all the rest of them, I have a couple of Monday morning phone calls that I look forward to every year, not with Monster Drawing. So,
well, that's good. That's good to know. No, I don't think I've never had a problem with it. I mean, I would normally be drawing for an hour that day anyway.
Right.
So it's no big deal.
Well, you've taken the opportunity the last couple of years to collaborate. That's one of the things that I think has been kind of awesome about Monster Drawing is people, after we've done it a few times, have decided to take the opportunity not just to sit in their little silos, but you in Hamilton, for example, you pass drawings halfway through, and Bill Fisher, and so it's become a thing that a number of people do. So they kind of plan for it, and that's one of the things I like.
It is fun. Well, when you have other artists sitting around you and they have stuff and you're pressed for time, you might as well just, here, do something with this. Yeah. And I love collaborating anyway, so it's super fun. And then, you know that the drawings are just gonna go away in a few minutes anyway when people buy them, or I guess they buy them. It's not a bidding thing; they just buy them.
They just buy them, and if more than one person wants the same drawing, there's a little bit of a game. So when the drawings are completed, they are taken away, they're photographed, they're put in a little sleeve, and then when they are pinned to the wall, that's when they're available for purchase. So for example, I couldn't come up to you at the table and say, I want that, here's, put me down for it. You have to wait, you have to play the process. And so a number of artists who are the sort of Monster Drawing most popular artists, and I put you on that list, there's a bit of a following. And so the audience is paying attention and they're watching the art handlers take the drawing, falling over in the chair, waiting for the drawing to come back. And so if more than one person wants a drawing, you draw cards for it, so that there's no, the highest pocketbook doesn't win, it's just the highest card. So I think that's a nice thing about it. Let's go on to InLight, because I think that was the initial sort of reason for being here, which is a big project that is coming up on Friday. And I think maybe I might go through just a little bit of the history. You alluded to it in your introduction and referencing Chuck Scanlon, and then I want you to talk about it from the perspective of both a board member but also a participating artist.
Okay.
So InLight Richmond is 1708's typically one-night exhibition of light-based art and performance that has moved around the city every year. We started doing it in 2008, and the project on my right, your left with the outlined windows was from that first year. And as Matt referenced, the gallery was celebrating its 30th birthday, and the board was trying to come up with a way to acknowledge that and honor that occasion. And Chuck Scanlon and I believe Amy Oliver had both been to Paris and attended Nuit Blanche, which is White Nights. It's from dusk till dawn. It's a citywide public art exhibition that covers the city of Paris, and they thought it would be interesting to try to do a more grassroots version of that here. And so in 2008, we organized the first InLight. I wasn't a 1708 employee then, but I volunteered on behalf of the VMFA where I was working. And I think for the most part, it hasn't really changed in its core way it works, which is we invite artists to propose light-based work that engages the neighborhood in some capacity. And so the first year, again, as you see there, was in the Galleries neighborhood on Broad Street. And artists proposed sculptural pieces like this, which I'll talk about in a second, big projections, performance-based work. And so, there's a certain amount of spectacle to the type of stuff. The project on the left is Peter Cully's piece. He was the lead architect for the museum's expansion project when he was here, and he researched Jackson Ward's architecture and created this lighthouse. And so what you're seeing is this giant scaffolding structure with windows and doors made of aluminum and with black light paint. And so we had black lights along the alley of that space, and throughout the night they illuminated the windows and doors, the apertures of the building.
It's just black light paint?
I think so. I can't remember now. It's been...
It wasn't
can't remember.
neon?
I'm sorry?
It wasn't neon?
No, it was black light, because he worked with a lighting designer. It was crazy ambitious for the first year. I mean,
Yeah.
the guy was out there for like 3 or 4 days working on it. And I remember there was an advanced party at Can for that first InLight. And his main job was getting the museum built, which, was already behind schedule and all this stuff. And I remember being at
Super bright
and a board member from 1708, who I will not name, went up to Alex, the director of the museum. You can try to guess who this is.
I'm trying.
I went up to Alex and said, Peter Cully's the best. He's been working on this project day and night for a week and a half. And we were all like, shh, stop talking. That's not helping Peter or us or anything. Anyway, so that was the first year. And I think right off the bat, there was this sense of, there weren't plans initially to continue it. It was going to be a one-time thing.
Right.
But pretty immediately, it was like, whoa, this thing is... people like this, and they came out and they were engaged. And to your comment about sometimes contemporary art seeming like scary and you don't know how to talk about it, there was this accessibility that felt pretty immediate that first year. You were on the board by then the first year, weren't you?
I was on the, I just got on the board. So it must be that's when I started, because Chuck was still there. And I went to the first one, but I do remember somebody was talking about it, how it ought to be an annual thing or something, because there was a permanent piece left on the sidewalk in front of 1708, right?
Yep.
And then there was talk about everywhere we have it, on Broad Street at that time, we could leave a permanent, one of them would be a permanent thing.
Right.
But it's a hugely ambitious project. I mean, when InLight is over Friday, Saturday, we'll start working on the next InLight. And I was thinking about it today, about how, it's a 5-hour deal this Friday, whether it rains or a hurricane could come or whatever.
It's going to be sunny.
It's not going to rain.
Yeah.
But it could. Still, it's just that 5 hours. And, that's how many minutes is that? 300, right? 300. It's almost, every day of the year, almost every day is planning for 1 minute of next year's InLight.
That's depressing.
So if you guys, if you do go to InLight, just whatever you're doing, where, every minute represents a day that somebody was working on this thing. And it's located in a different part of town every year, which makes it even harder, because you have to identify a neighborhood and the buildings, and you have to learn about the history of it, and then you have to collaborate with the property owners, and then you have to get artists in, and they have to collaborate with the structure of the place, and then you're dealing with light as a medium, which as an artist, when I first got into it, I still don't know what I'm doing with light-based work. I just had a couple of rules. I didn't want to use a projection, and here, I don't know what's projected there, but this is something that I made for one of the many years that I've done InLight, it seems like. But this is an example of me not knowing what I'm doing. I just made a covered wagon, and the top canopy is transparent, and I figured, well, there'll be lights on behind it or something. And then one of my collaborators, right at the end, just projected something onto it. And then on the inside of it as well.
Yeah.
But that's not pictured here. But obviously I don't know what I'm doing, but I got to build a covered wagon, which was kind of cool. I made it out of PVC because PVC was white, and I figured that would reflect some light. I don't know. And every year it's something vastly different. And then when I see other artists, what they've done, I'm always fascinated with that. I mentioned to you earlier that Star Foster's.
I don't have a picture of that one. Yeah.
Well, there wasn't anything to
Right.
picture because it was a TV
That
screen
was-
that depicted Star Foster's dance group dancing in a basement, but it was all dark, and they had a camera that could see people in the dark, and they were bumping into each other and dancing for 5 hours down there in the dark. So their light project was without light, and that's one that always stuck with me because it wasn't a projection. You know, the reason I don't want to do projections is because it seems like it's like a movie. You know, you can project whatever. So I take it as an artist, I take it as a challenge to extend what I think could be possible in my art making practice, to jump into something that I have no idea what I'm doing, and apply pressure to myself to try to make it work. And as soon as you send in this proposal, and the proposal is basically just something that you make up, maybe this would look cool, and then you wait until you get accepted to find out if you can actually make that thing. And each year it's been a variation of something that I've done, but it's when I go back to do my normal work, what I now think is possible is extended beyond that, because I was able to pull off whatever weird thing that I made for InLight. And this year is no different.
And I wish I had a picture of it. I think, can I interrupt just with like a couple of procedural things, just so
Sure.
everyone doesn't think that we automatically give our board members a spot in InLight, because that which isn't the case.
No,
so,
yeah, go ahead.
So InLight, as Matt said, has moved around each year. These are just a couple of the highlights. And we invite artists to propose projects. We bring in a juror from outside of Richmond. This past year we brought in Ellie Kevorkian, who is the Director of Artistic Residencies at the Bemis Center in Omaha. And so she reviews the proposal, she visits the site, and picks the best work. And so she selected Matt's proposal, which I'll let him talk about in a second. The image on the right with the eye was from InLight 2011, I think, which was at Tredegar along the river, and that's the canal right there at Browns Island. And you're looking at one half of this sort of paired projection screens where there were Christmas lights connecting the two screens, and when the eyes met, the lights were illuminated. So kind of a technically complicated projection. From the second year, which was the one year I was not as involved, this was a project by Edward Perver that was sort of projection mapping. So these hands clasped each other. They sort of reached across the divide of the facade of this building. So I'm realizing there's a lot of metaphors of like bridge building and connection making, which I think InLight does in a really interesting way. This was also from that year, and this I like this project because, and Matt's talked about this a little bit, there's a lot of collaboration that goes into InLight. And this was a project that a poet in town, Joshua Poteet, and Robert Ventura, who's an architect and designer and artist, collaborated on about the story of Gabriel. And it was in a storefront. It utilized this expanse of the store and this really lovely story, and was just this great poetic, really lovely, sort of much more simple, less sort of spectacle and projection-based work. But it signifies two things that I think have been important about InLight. One, again, is collaboration, but the other is that InLight often invites folks who don't immediately pop up in our sphere as visual artists. So Roberto being an architect and Joshua a poet is an example. There was a year, I think it was the year that we were at the Canal Walk, where there was a project accepted by the juror from an 8th grade class at Mannequin Sabbath, or at Sabbath at Stony Point, I'm sorry. And so it's really been this great opportunity that we don't offer necessarily with exhibitions for different types of creative people to be a part of InLight. And I think that's been one of the real strengths. This was a project from last year at VMFA. Eva Roca, who just got her MFA in KI, and she took work that she'd already been doing sort of about human trafficking, but layered that with the role that museums play with, thinking about the provenance of work and how museums come to acquire artwork, sometimes in ways that maybe have slightly challenging lineages. And so thinking about that kind of thing, like property and ownership, but it was a pretty ambitious project on the grounds of the museum. And then another thing that InLight, when it works really well, I think, is when the work really addresses the site. And this was a project also from last year where two artists, Andrew Michelson and John Dombrowski, considered the Confederate Memorial Chapel, which is on the grounds of the VMFA, and offered this opportunity for folks to come into the chapel, many of whom, who here has been inside the chapel? You've probably been to the VMFA. I worked at the VMFA, and I never went into the chapel until this project. And so they had this sound and light installation where they used the sort of high power movie lights that you have on movie sets at night that are just like massively bright. And then they had recorders inside the chapel, so when you walked in, your footsteps and your language and your speaking was picked up by the recorders at the front and then played back at the front of the church. So as you walked through, you heard the sounds of the folks coming behind you. And though it was pretty simple and maybe a little more crowded than they even expected, it offered people a chance to reflect on what that building might mean to Richmond and to the grounds, and I thought it was it was a pretty powerful installation. And I think, Matt, I pulled up some of your favorites because I think a lot of these do similar things too. And I'm realizing now there is a thread, like there's no projection in your favorite, and I'm understanding your like interest in InLight.
Well, a lot of it is based on, what I thought, oh man, I could have done that.
Right.
It's what we always say about good art. I always look at good art, and if I say, oh man, why didn't I do that? That's when I can think, it's pretty good.
Right.
And this is, something that I could get my hands on, a lot of buckets, and then put them together and light them up.
Right.
And it does something, and it did something in person. One thing about some of these images that you're seeing, they're way cooler in person, and a lot of it moves, and a lot of them feel like they move, and that kind of thing. This one was, I liked it because it was interactive and it was kind of fun. It actually inspired the one that we did the following year, which was not as successful as this one. In this one, everything moves. The bird is flapping its wings, and the squirrel is messing with the people that are riding the bikes and stuff. And I just thought it was clever. And as far as making it goes, it's a really simple structure there, and then one of those overhead projectors that you find in your third grade class, and that was the whole light source. And I just thought it was great, and I started making plans for the following year that I would do that. And then, and then you start making stuff, and you end up making a mess sometimes. But the interactive quality of this thing, anybody could get on it and ride it and make it work. And it had this strobe that animated those little birds that were on the umbrellas, so that when you were riding it, you pedaled the thing and it made the birds fly, essentially. So you couldn't get a good photograph of it, but everyone who got on it and rode it liked it, but then there was no record of it. So then that led us to the next year. It was like, well, this next year we're going to make something that you can't ride, but it's going to show up nicely in photographs. So I'm one of those stars.
I think you're a star that's moved too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it moves around.
You're going to be, does this have a laser pointer on it too?
Oh, no.
I don't know. I don't see anything that looks like it might. I'm afraid to press these other buttons.
Is the class required to go to InLight?
We're going to go and beta test a new type of crowdsourcing art software.
Ooh.
Oh, sweet.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We'll tell you all about it.
Well, yeah, so Matt's piece with Tim is now, see the single star and that big block below Lee Street? That's where your piece will be now.
In that big block?
in that big block.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Yeah, I forgot to mention Tim Harper, my collaborator for the last 2 years. He's not here, but he and I work together. We both live out in the middle of nowhere, and we both have these studios out in the middle of nowhere, and neither one of us really know what we're doing when it comes to InLight for sure, and then art for the most part. I mean, I know a lot about art stuff, and then you start getting bored, and then you start making other stuff, and then kind of clear the slate, and it's like, what are we doing here? And then it goes back to feeling like when you were 12 years old, let's just make something that looks cool or you could play with or whatever. And he makes these little mobiles and out of found objects and stuff. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention Tim. He's my collaborator.
He's your collaborator. So InLight, as I said, is Friday, 7 to midnight, Scott's Edition. This is just a little preview of some of the work that will be there. I realize now that you have posted some tests that I could have pulled off of Facebook to drop in this, which I didn't do. So I'm not even previewing your InLight piece, so you'll have to come to see Matt and Tim's piece. This is a piece by Adam Brown, which is a series of images of the moon going through the cycles of the moon that will be up high in Scott's Edition, so kind of simulating where the moon will be. This is an installation by Miata Coenzi, who is a young artist who just got her MFA from Hunter, called Gathering Space, and it's about her sort of racial identity and sort of wrestling with that. This is a piece by Rob Carter, who's a Richmond-based artist, and he's, through stop motion animation and collage, has taken these images of this town in Spain that I'm now forgetting the name of it, but it has some crazy microclimate. It's like one of the most sunny places in the globe, and so he has this video. Again, it's mostly like stop motion and collage that goes from like the landscape without the city to the city evolving over time, and so this idea of it being this kind of, that the sun is the source of growth, and so it changes across the sort of 15-minute video loop. This is a piece by two artists from San Francisco, John Bernson and Andy Diaz-Hope. It's called God. It's there are all these hyphens in it, parentheses. It's gods and goddesses is not exactly what it is, but it's along those lines. But it's like G-O-D, parentheses, E-S, parentheses, D-E-S-S, parentheses. Yeah, right, now I can't remember it. But they've taken footage from Hollywood films over the last 30 years of gods and goddesses and sort of made this montage, and it's projected up onto this revolving crystal, and so then projects those images in a refracted way around the room. So that will be...
Is that an interior piece?
Hopefully. One of the challenges, as Matt alluded to with InLight moving every year, is that there's some things are in place, and we have, sort of a workflow that we know pretty well. I've had the same team. Now, this is the 9th one we've done, and so we've all, right, I know, your eyes got big, mine get big too. We've had the same team for most of it, so there's a lot of like knowledge and experience, but when you move sites every year, it's
you clean the slate
reinvent
almost.
the wheel. And Scott's Edition has meant we've been dealing with, I think now the list of properties we are dealing with is maybe up to like 26 or 27, because it's everything from we are projecting onto the side of your building to we're going to be walking past your building to this, which is we want to be inside your vacant building that you're trying to rent. And so we've gotten a tentative yes, but we have not secured like, here are the keys yet. So there's a lot of like down to the wireness that happens with InLight, as today is Tuesday.
It's interesting, as one of the participating artists, is that the building owners don't know it, but they've been a collaborator as well.
Right.
Because our Tim and my collaboration was very different. Before we knew the building owner wouldn't let us connect it a certain way.
Right.
So the piece then changed.
Right.
To adapt to a whole different
Right.
space. And they don't even know that. They were an important collaborator. And they had a great idea too, to take the backing off and make them transparent,
Right.
which was great. And I would love to talk to that building owner and thank him for helping us come up with this better idea, because they were kind of lame before. And now they're really cool.
It is going to be better now,
Yeah.
and it's your project went through. I think I don't even know if you know all of the placements
Well-
that it went
well,
through
no,
internally.
I knew
but-
that they would go through some, but yeah,
Yeah.
there was the proposal,
Right.
which is vastly different, I'm sure. I don't even remember what it was. You know, for the students that are here and watching, there's the proposal. That is an art project in itself.
Right.
Get the proposal. And then, when it's too late, when it's too close to Friday, you just put up whatever you want. And there's no way after all of this year of planning that they're going to kick you out.
It's only Tuesday.
Oh yeah, I
Right.
spoke too soon.
Though you do bring up a good point, though. Not quite that flip, but like almost always the final project, whether it's at InLight or in the gallery, is not how the conversation started. Pretty much on a regular basis.
Right, and the advantage of having an out-of-town juror is the out-of-town juror doesn't care what you guys have to go through to adapt
Right.
what it is that he picks into the show.
Right.
If you were the juror, you would think about the trouble that would happen,
Right.
and it would be all projections probably.
Right.
Just all projections on one wall. But the juror picks the things that, a variety of things that
Right.
he would want to see have happen. And then he puts it on 1708 to make all that stuff happen.
Yeah, that's true. There is a teeny bit of give and take where he or she will make their initial, like, these are the X number that I'm recommending. And then we'll look at them together just to make sure there's no, like, once or twice there have been red flags where there's a project that sounds really, really, really ambitious, like Peter Cully ambitious, like 4 days installation.
Yeah.
And then you get to the resume and they're a senior in high school. And you're like, nope. They
Yeah.
don't, that's not a safe space to enter into. And so
All right, well-
there's a teeny bit of that, but not much. And there is a lot of conversation that goes on. In some cases, we will push an artist to make the project a little bit bigger than they initially thought. In some cases, there's just a natural, like, this would be great, but this is the reality. But there is a lot of back and forth until really Friday at 6:45, I guess,
Yeah.
is when it's all final.
Yeah.
We have had the benefit of working with the same production team every year now, and those are the folks that they provide all of the projectors and sound equipment and lights, but they also really help us manage and map out the electrical plan, because that's where it gets complicated from one of the ways it's complicated from one site to the next. Like, in some cases you can tap into electrical outlets from buildings. In other cases, some of those projectors are so massive that they would just, especially if you're drawing from an apartment building, you're going to kill everybody inside the apartment building's electricity if you're pulling from their circuit. So there's a whole level of that goes on that has to be managed, but the production team helps us really we don't pay them for that, and they help us figure out, like, okay, Matt and Thames, they're going to draw about this much power, so if you can probably tap into the electrical grid here, or they can't, so we either need to, in some cases we've brought in electricians you could bring more power to, I don't even know the language, that's why someone else does this.
Right.
Or we need a generator, so. all that stuff.
And just making it dark everywhere also
Yeah.
is a headache. I was thinking the production of InLight is probably, like, it would be less of a big deal if you decided on Saturday to instead make a movie, like a full like a blockbuster.
Right.
But then I was thinking, well, someone could start on Saturday and make a documentary on the next InLight.
Oh, that's a good idea.
That is a good idea.
That's a great
Any of
idea.
you
Anybody
guys-
want to do it starting this Saturday?
Starting this Saturday. All right.
All right, maybe we'll find some takers. You could start on Monday when I get my Monday morning phone
Yeah,
calls.
okay.
That's maybe the
Yeah.
time to do it. The lights, it's funny, the lights, every year, without fail, when we go into some of the neighborhoods or sites or wherever the next InLight's going to be, and we're talking through it, some wise person in the room will say things like, oh, someone last year at the museum, who I will not name, I don't think they're there anymore, but they said, I really hope you're planning to do this at night, because if you're doing it in the daytime, you're not going to be able to see anything. So we always get some of those questions. I know, and you're like, really? We've done this before, and the lights are another part of it. Like, oh, there's street lights all over Scott's Addition. This isn't a good spot to do it. And like, well, we turn them all off, and it's we got it. We go out. We have a detailed map of all the exterior lights, all the street lights. We work with DPU, which is also a funny relationship, but
Yeah, I just don't know how to do that. I don't know how to convince.
call. And they come down and you say, we want all these lights
I don't know
off.
the number, Emily.
And then they say it's going to cost you $2,200. Like, you're making that number up, and like, it's our rough estimate. Every year it's between $1,800 and $2,200
Just to turn them off?
to turn the lights off, because it's never one grid. But here's the best part. About 6 months after InLight, every year we get a check for about 75% of that amount as a refund. And so every year they come like, why don't you just start with a lower number? You're getting there, like, we can't. This is our policy. I'm like, this is the most inefficient policy. But okay, here's our rough estimate for InLight. Look forward to getting that refund back.
Yeah, that's
9 years
weird.
in, they haven't figured out how to make that better. But that's another project. So Scott's Addition, there's a ton of breweries, so they're all having this loiter here sign to draw attention to them. I like that. I like that. I like how the fern here. So maybe we should loiter here on the loiter here sign. Does anyone have any questions? Thoughts?
I'm curious about Saturday after, how do you guys just look and think about everything if they have to
Well, so he's being a little facetious that we roll in Saturday morning and start, because we
start the next one.
one. We've actually started the next one already for the first time ever.
All right.
So InLight, we do most of the work for InLight on the same day. So we get to the site around 7 o'clock in the morning and literally work for 12 hours, and then it's on, and we're still working throughout the whole time. There inevitably are problems the whole night, of all variety, from like a generator's out to a DVD player's not working to, which is why we have a production company, because we call them and they fix it. To we're out of anything, like we don't have a volunteer or what have you. And then at midnight, InLight is over, and we have to pretty much deinstall everything that night. So we're probably, depending on how much the production company can do, how many artists are there, the scale, we probably finish around 3:30 or 4. So it's almost a 24. So my point is that we don't do anything on Saturday. Is the answer to that question, except the natural that should have happened or that should have happened. Like, there's a tendency, not only, like, I joke about the Monday phone call, because that does happen, but I'm already like picking apart the things, like, we should have done this differently, we should have done that differently, in between sleeping, because I've been up for 24 hours, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, Saturday afternoon, if you go down there, there probably won't be much evidence that InLight was there the night before.
Yeah.
Right?
The porta johns might still be there, and the trash cans. That's all. We're like in and out, because otherwise it sort of drags on. Like, when we've tried to do it in bits and pieces and do a little bit on Saturday and a little bit on Sunday, it's just painful. You just want to be completely done. But then, to answer more seriously your question, we do sit down pretty soon after and just generally go through the night and talk about feedback we've heard from either the artists themselves or the property owners or the audience, and try to make changes or think about things we could do differently.
And a lot of those hiccups are related to the site too, so
Yeah.
there's editing as far as that goes, because next year won't be at the same site
Yeah.
anyway. So it becomes something new every year, I've found. Right?
It's true. I think what will be interesting is in 2017. So next year's InLight is our 10th. And so we're planning for it back in the gallery's neighborhood, so just down the street on
Oh, we
Broad
are?
Street. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
FYI. So that's a site will have been in 3 times. And so there are suddenly lessons that can be applied that are specific to the site, like things like the first year we had InLight, we closed the streets. We closed streets as part of InLight. So the first year in Broad Street, we closed the streets on a Friday night. 5 years later, we went back to Broad Street for the 5th InLight, and the police were like, it's a different landscape. If you want to close the streets on a Friday night, if you want to close Broad Street on a Friday night, it's going to cost you $40,000. And so that's why we didn't close the streets. I don't know if you remember, but there was still vehicular traffic.
Oh, right.
So that's a big one to think about for
Yeah.
next year already. So it'll probably be on Saturday.
That's so exciting that your 10-year is on the ICA's.
Yep, yep.
That's amazing.
I know, it is kind of amazing, actually. And it will be probably a couple of weeks, few weeks after that happens, so, yeah.
So I have an ICA-related question.
Yes, sir.
So you're talking about this 40th anniversary, and we had the pleasure of speaking with Lisa Fryman about the transformation possibility that's brought by the ICA.
Mm-hmm.
And 1708 has a very similar mission, right?
Mhm.
You're not a collecting institution, and you played this role for the last 40 years of really challenging and changing the landscape of what the Richmond art scene is. So can you talk a little bit about 1708's mission going forward when there's this kind of giant building up the street from you?
Yeah, we've spent the last 2 years now really talking about that as a board, or having a conversation that was instigated by that as a board. And I think initially when the ICA was announced, there was a little bit of panic amongst some longtime 1708 folks who were like, we're done. Like, we're never going to compete in this, like, in the fundraising and all that stuff. Like, forget about it. And that lasted for about 30 seconds. And I think there was a sense of like, well, wait a minute, like, let's like figure out what this, like, there's really actually an opportunity here. And we've thought a lot this last little bit about what the gallery does best and how what we do best fits into Richmond. And I think with some exceptions, we've recognized that we tend to best serve earlier career artists. There are exceptions to that, obviously, but for the most part, artists coming out of their either graduate programs or some cases undergraduate programs, like the resources that we can offer, the types of programming, the type of space the gallery is compared to the ICA is in line with that. And I think that is an area that we're pushing. I think we would love to do more by artists. We would love to give them more money. We've been sort of coming up with a strategic plan, which is like boring nonprofit talk, but it's a way to kind of line up your resources and shore up your sort of ideas, where we provide better writing for artists, better photography, installation shots, where we try to be even more thoughtful about who we're introducing them to when they're here, to really sort of balance that experience. And I think when the ICA is open, that's just one other part of that. And I think that it's actually quite complementary as opposed to in competition. Even just from the sheer proximity, like I have this vision of the fancy guests staying at the Quirk and walking past 1708 all day long, going to the ICA, and I think that's actually a real thing, like that will really happen. And I think as long as we're continuing to really like focus on that subset of artists, especially, or be a place where artists who have ideas that they need to push in a way that maybe aren't ready for their commercial space or aren't at a scale that the ICA is going to be supportive of, that we're still that place. And thus far, it's only been a positive, really generative conversation. I think that it hasn't impacted our money at all. I think what is really lovely thing about Richmond is that the philanthropic arts community recognizes that there is sort of an ecosystem across the city, and that you need big institutions like the VMFA and the ICA, but you also need smaller ones, and that there's a place for everybody. And I think that from my perspective, the giving has just been proportionate across those. I mean, and I think that part was the part that freaked the most people out, was that there's going to be this fundraising campaign and people are going to stop giving to 1708, and that hasn't happened. So. Hi.
Can't remember if you actually said it, but you said that you're kind of already started to plan connections and money.
Yes.
But and you bring in outside users here. But how early do people start submitting ideas? Like, what is like?
So in a perfect world, in a perfect world, we would have the call for proposals ready in like January. So start looking for it in January. And in a perfect world, we're there. We've been slowly. One of the changes that we've done with InLight, based on response and based on sort of the debriefs that happen after, is bringing in more curated projects. So balancing the juried call for proposals with artists who've invited to participate. And this, the InLight next year will be a real shift in that direction. There will still be an open call because I think, as I talked about earlier, it's been this really fantastic way for folks who we wouldn't identify necessarily to be a part of it, to submit their project and to most, in many cases, be accepted and participate. So look for it in January.
And sort of along the same thing, but sort of on the one
Mhm.
Is that like a first come first served as far as artists go, or do you have like a way of choosing?
So it's a great question. Last year we changed how we did it. In the first few years, as we were sort of growing the list, we really did a targeted invitation. We came up with our 60 artists. We tried to balance that out and bring some new folks in each year, but we invited those 60, and then, inevitably in December someone can't or what have you. So there was always a little bit of like, maybe 50 responded yes, we need to find 10 more. And then over the course of time, we also got plenty of artists like, I really wanted to do it, you didn't ask me, and we decided last year that the fairest way to do it is to put all of the emails in a list of anyone who wants to participate. And we send out an email, and are basically like the first 60 who answer have a slot. And that worked really well. We were done in about 2 days as opposed to about 3 weeks. It's like, hey, Matt Lively, are you going to do it? You haven't answered my email. What time slot do you want? Because that happens a lot. So if you are interested, there's an info at 1708 Gallery email, and just send a quick, I'm an artist, I'd love to be on that list, and we will add you on that list. Do it quickly, because if we don't send it out, I'm really ambitious, thinking we might send it out this week, but if we don't, we're sending it out early next week, and it will be done by. So look out for that email.
I'll be looking for it.
I have a question for Matt then.
Okay.
So one of the things I hear again and again from you, from what you're talking about, what you mentioned, is you kind of have this anti-elitist kind of mantra in terms of the things that you're looking at and things you want out of 1708 and out of
I didn't mean to say that again and again.
Well, no, but I like it. I mean, part of what I like about 1708 is it does feel welcoming and accessible, both to the community, to the artists, to young artists, to current artists, to people at ECU. So can you talk a little bit about, I guess, less anti-elitist and more like the accessibility that you try to have, that you appreciate and or like you see at 1708?
I see. Well, keep in mind this anti-elitist stuff is I've trained my brain to think like that so that I can stay motivated and active in the studio. So I don't really feel like that, but I've trained my brain to behave that way so that I'll work harder. You understand what I'm saying? It is welcoming. It's right there on Broad Street, and it's open all the time, and you can come in, and they are welcoming. I've taken people there and walked in separate from them just to see how they would receive the space, and they've been allowed to say, I don't know what this stuff is, or what is this, or whatever, the things normal people would say. And then sometimes those normal people have fascinating things to say, and a lot of times they would be right. My dad, for example, would say about that work we saw before, these look like big dog toys. and he would be right in the artist's head if he was to say that. The outreach programs that 1708 does, that when we put InLight and other things out into the city, I mean, we invite the criticism, we put it right there out in the world for you to see and absorb however you want. You don't have to. You can look at it, criticize it, judge it, enjoy it, whatever. Kind of like a little like this street art, the murals and stuff that go up in Richmond. It's that same kind of thing where once it's out in the world, it becomes everyone's to love, hate, be confused about, talk about, have your favorite, have your least favorite, whatever. It's just hard as an artist to pretend to be a normal person walking by a place like that. You know, when it's a fast food restaurant, they make it really easy for you. You know, they're big bold letters, and you understand what you're going to get when you walk in there, because there might even be pictures of what they have in there on the window. But when you walk by 1708 as a normal person, you don't necessarily know what's happening in there. But once you go in, it's an inviting, happy place. Confusing, but happy.
Every now and then we get someone who walks in and say, "Oh, sorry, I thought this was an art gallery." That's my favorite.
I could see that happening. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Any last questions?
Could I say one more thing?
Yep, you can say
Please.
whatever you want.
I wasn't saying what you said I was saying about it, but I understand.
What I heard was good.
Good. 1708 does exactly what it is that I love to do in my own art practice, and that is collaborate with anybody and everybody.
Yes.
From other nonprofits to artists that don't know what they're doing, and they welcome the world in. It's the only reason I ever said that a movie should be made, that we should make a movie, because making a movie has to be collaborative. You can't do everything when you make a movie like that. So 1708 embodies all of that is in my own art practice, and I love 1708.
I love this movie idea.
Okay.
I really don't need another project. but I
That should be
really
the
love
title.
idea.
I love 1708.
Yeah.
I think that's a great end. And it's exactly 6:31.
Look at that.
Perfect.
You guys, the best timed conversation we've had.
We practiced beforehand.
It's all rehearsed.
Thank you all.
Yeah,
Come out on
thank you.
Friday.
Okay, we'll see you.
Thanks, Matt.
Oh, thank you. Good to see you. Man.
Nice to see you.